Hi everyone, good evening. We'll just wait for a minute or so before we get started. All right, while folks trickle in, let me just make get started with a brief introduction of what we are doing here at PM Schools, what we're doing with PM School Star Session, and introduce our guest for tonight, and lay some ground rules about like how we want to conduct today's session. And we get started after that. So, just letting you know, Aman, we have folks who are dialing in from LinkedIn as well. A sizable portion of our viewers are from LinkedIn, actually. So we generally have close to 50 people who are dialing in from LinkedIn Live, and obviously have a bunch of folks here as well. So Priyal would be moderating the questions today. We have folks who will be like dropping questions in the LinkedIn comment section, and which we'll be bringing it here, and then we'll be queuing it for you. So all right, let's get started with today's Star Session. So welcome everyone. Welcome to PM School's Star Session series, where we have someone from the industry join us and share their wisdom and expertise in the product management domain for obviously product aspirants, early stage product managers. Okay, I probably have to ask folks to like mute themselves. Okay, yeah. In case, I mean, you probably have to unmute yourself. So I just okay, set the settings for mute by default. In case anyone wants to ask a question, we'll obviously open it up, open up the access, and then you can ask us the question directly, or you can drop in the chat section as well. So yeah, we're talking about Star Session. So we have Aman Singh join us today. He is a product leader. And he has a very varied and colorful experience of his journey, which he's going to share with us in a bit. Currently, he's leading product initiatives at Get My Parking, which is a smart parking platform, a global smart parking platform today, with obviously the platform deployed across the globe. I'm not sure how many countries we are live today. Aman, maybe you can add it along with your introduction. Just talking a little bit about PM School. We are today we are India's largest product community after product Mind the Product in which is actually based in Singapore. We help aspiring product folks to bag their dream product management, their first product management jobs. And we help you through the journey with an 8-week live cohort program, which incidentally starts next week or the week after. I'm not entirely sure, in 2 weeks. If you're interested, reach out to Priyal from my team and we'll be happy to answer any questions you have. So with that, we start off today's session. It is going to be slightly different from our previous star sessions, since it's going to be an AMA. So it's an Ask Me Anything format. So please keep dropping your questions relevant to the topic today, which is going to be B2B product management, in the chat section. And I and Priyal will be curating these questions and addressing them to Aman, who will be like sharing his experience and thoughts around it. And please keep dropping questions. No question is there's nothing like a foolish question. Everyone, it's any question you ask will benefit everyone who's like dialing in, and we'll have this recording go on LinkedIn and YouTube as well, so others can benefit through what we're doing today. With that, I hand it over to Aman. All yours.
Thanks, Kushal. Thanks for that brief intro. And I didn't know you guys are doing so well, man. Congratulations on getting PM School to where it is, and looking forward to seeing brilliant minds come out and do well in product. Right? Cool. Coming to myself, let's try to wrap it up quickly. So God has been kind. I've got experiences across the board, and I've been fortunate enough to try different things in my product journey. I started with my own startup back in 2016, building drones, actually building networking solutions for drones. So this was where we built a solution layer which could integrate into any civilian drone and connect it over the cloud, and you could fly it basically using telecom network anywhere across the world. Technologically speaking, it was a very fascinating idea, but lack of funding, and being the first time entrepreneur I created a problem statement that quite didn't exist, and got accolades but couldn't make money. So shut that down in 2017. A lot of learnings from that entire journey. In fact, I used to code a part of it, so I have that bias of PMs knowing bit of technology. And then moving to where I am today, get my parking, started off in the hardware IoT product. That's where I met you, Kushal. We joined just one day at a difference of each other. So
Yeah.
I remember meeting you in Delhi and both of us figuring out, okay, what crazy shit is this? And then I spent 3 years with you building great products. I get my parking, getting the operations to scale in Europe, learning how automation works in this industry, and very different from what you would experience or expect in India. And then I moved out briefly to delivery, worked as a product lead there, working on what is delivery's new software product, or what they're calling their logistics operating system, which is basically powering their expansion outside of India. And it was a very different problem statement. So imagine building something like Android for developers, where you have to define an operating system at its base.
All right. Right. We seem to have internet troubles with Aman. I hope you can hear me. You can just use emojis
Yes.
or okay. Cool. All right. Just to fill in the blanks while Aman joins us back, I think we were talking about me and Aman worked together quite closely for a couple of years when we were building a B2B to C platform in the smart parking space. What that entails is in obviously organized or in countries where the parking space is very organized, Europe, US, some parts of Southeast Asia as well. There's a need to obviously package parking as a service using technology. So yeah, Aman's back.
Yeah, I'm sorry, did I drop out? Okay. Yeah, I didn't realize my screen just suddenly went blank.
We lost you for about 10 seconds. I was trying to fill in the gaps of what we were doing in Europe.
Understood. Yep. So I've been back, and we've been scaling, adding more use cases. We've been trying to understand how to penetrate the marketing, how to penetrate the market better. So in a way, what modern terms would call growth, how to trigger growth, how to find that linchpin that gets you the next 10x growth. Kushal, just to update you on the numbers, we do about 1.25 million transactions, so 1.25 million transactions monthly. We process more than $10 million monthly. MAU and DAU numbers are all off the charts. So it's been going
Very
great.
cool. Great to hear. Yeah, always good to hear something which you worked on, like taking off, right?
Yeah.
Even briefly. Yeah. Thanks for sharing the intro, Aman. So let's get started. Maybe some I would say boilerplate questions, right, which generally come to us or to me as well. I'll start with that. Like, what is your journey to become which led you to the path of wanting to become product manager in your career?
So because I started out with my own venture, right from the sales guy to the guy building the UI to the guy hiring the people who would build it for him to the guy writing the code for the drone, I wore all those hats. And I remember my interview joining here, when I was asked to sum all of that. Of course, one is a CEO, and then there's of course another guy which is called a product manager. And in very true sense, in most startups, you have product managers being the CEO of their own product, being the CEO of a BU, trying to get it out, trying to do the GTM, trying to get the first traction, trying to find out, okay, what works, what doesn't, define an MVP, take it to the first paying customer, get the first paying customer, and then take it to scale. So my journey started from there, where I realized that, maybe I won't say I enjoy, but maybe I look forward to taking on those challenges head on. And simplifying complicated problem statements is where I would say my forte lies. And then being able to communicate those simplified blocks down to the people who would execute it, who would code it, down to the operation guys who will monitor it, who will make sure it gets deployed right, and down to my sales team, which will then go out to selling it, and how would that picture look like, and what fairy tales we would sing around it. So I realized that I was able to do that, and I enjoyed doing that a lot more than I actually did coding. I was an engineer before this. So I think all of those things kind of pushed me in that direction, that a career in product would actually turn out to be something that I would enjoy doing. And knock on wood, no day has been boring since.
That's great. A personal question, actually. Do you see yourself? I mean, now you've been like in the B2B space for quite some time. But given a chance, would you like switch over to be working on consumer products,
Sure.
or
So,
you continue work on B2B in the B2B space?
funnily enough, I have been working into the B2C space for about 2 years now. So one of our latest offerings is a web-based QR payment solution, where there are no more apps, and we are building single engagement, single transaction products more, because we are now getting that idea that nobody wants apps. Nobody wants to download more apps in this world unless you really, really have a compelling use case for it. Parking is definitely
Sure.
not one of those use cases, right? So how do you make sure that the user can engage, pay once and get out, and you actually make money on every transaction? So with focus being there, we are actually a lot more B2C focused. Of course, we still sell as a white label B2B,
Nice.
but the stream
Yeah.
of data that comes in, the volume that we pick, and the decisions we make are a lot more consumer behavior driven. And of course, as any product manager would have it, there's a sea of backlog, and I have to find that one golden fish that would give me the result that I want. And we always go back to our analytics tools, our understanding of the market, to figure out what is that problem. What is the problem that the consumer is facing? Why are they clicking on a certain button when they shouldn't be? Why are they pressing the back button when they shouldn't be? Is there a drop off in the funnel, let's say before a payment, because let's say Apple Pay is not working today? So all of those problems are now something we look at a day to day, on a day to day, month to month calendar, and we try to figure out how else do we optimize this and get it to 90, 95, 96% conversion. So yeah,
Sounds
so
good.
any B2B product manager, if there is any part of, and if you think about it, even at scale, eventually you're not selling to the end consumer on the street. But if you have scale, even a B2B manager has to think like B2C sometimes, because you are not just building to get your solution built and be paid, but the end person using it has to find utility. It has to be simple enough for the layman, for the end Joe, to be able to get his work done with it.
Yep. Yeah, I like the highlight of, or I like how you're pointing out that there's end of the day human at the other side. Doesn't matter if you're building it for B2B or
Yeah,
B2C. So you're building for people. So those principles still remain the same, irrespective of
pretty
the
much.
category.
Pretty much.
Yeah. We have a question from one of our audience. This is more on the transition side to become product manager. So what attributes do you believe a sales profession must possess to transition into an effective product manager?
This is a great one. We deal with this almost on a daily basis. So a great sales guy is the one who can paint a picture and of course sell, but also be able to do that internally. So you should be able to sell the vision that, let's say, if you have a problem statement where a client asks you that, if you build this, I'll give you the deal. You should be able to come back, break that vision down into, again, into sizable chunks. Tell why do we need to do this, and effectively communicate. Okay, the ask is A, the journey is B, the reason is C, and the output that we as an organization achieve at the end of the day is D. The ask should not be build a button. You have to first ask why need the button? What would that button do? How would somebody discover that button? Okay, why would somebody, and where would somebody go from that button? Okay, how critical is that button? Can I do it somewhere, some other way? Once you do exploring all of that, once you know why you're doing it and what value it adds and at what level of that journey would that button actually make a difference, then you've actually done your job. You've actually been able to translate a business requirement effectively into a story, which can then be digested by the guys downstream and delivered into production. So I would say understand the questions, divide it down into what is essential, what is desirable, and what is of course fancy, and maintain that transparent communication with your team.
Yeah, I think I mean I'm not sure if I'm pretty sure, Aman, you would have like interactions with sales teams right now, because they're like the first point of contact for products sometimes, right? At least in the B2B domain. B2C is like more, it has multiple, I would say, channels where, end users like get to know about the product, but B2B is like very focused, like it's mostly like driven by sales teams, etc. Maybe you can just shed some light about how product managers can work with, I would say, sales teams to get the right insights, which can power decision making for features in your in the product that you're building. What would your frameworks look like? What would the ideal, scenario or setup look like?
Sure. And Kushal, funny that you mentioned it. There are multiple stages at which product and sales actually have to work hand in hand. Otherwise, the whole process derails. So right from inception, when you're trying to figure out, okay, what is it that we want to add or build? If you're doing something incremental, sure. Or if you want to build something, let's say you're doing something new, then you really have to ask yourself, what is the problem you're solving? Is it something greenfield or is it something brownfield? Does the problem exist? You're just trying to do a better way of, create a better way of solving it, or are you bringing something entirely new? Is it paying through UPI, or is it entering a credit card online? Like different approaches. The way we would approach it typically is, once you know what problem you're trying to solve, you work with the sales guy to understand what is the market, what is the propensity to use, who are the stakeholders, and you do that in conversation, not just the sales guy but also talking to the end consumer and your customer with the sales guy. So you have to build all of those maps out. You have to have your personas mapped out. You have to draw those lines and understand what is each persona looking at, what is it that brings them in this transaction. If transparency of information, is it money that is being collected, is, for example, for lack of a better example, I'll go with parking. If it's somebody just trying to find who has paid and who has not paid, he doesn't have to care about what is the session ID. He just needs to know at this point of time, is this license plate paid or not? So you really have to boil it down to that and then try to put a structure around this. That, okay, I have 4 people I have to solve it for. Each one has their own motives. And how would those motives align in a user journey? And then when you start filtering that much crap out and you start getting your bare minimums in place, then you start figuring out how would you wireframe it, and then of course the story goes on. Now this is stage
Yeah.
one, when you're actually conceptualizing and building. Then there is stage two, where you're wireframing and you're designing and you want feedback, because it's very easy to get in the flow and build something and then bring it to market and realizing, oh shit, we actually forgot a screen, or we actually forgot a very important communication point. So
Yep.
going back for feedback, I think for product managers, especially in the B2B space, is extremely critical. And I would also say this, B2B is lucky. We are in touch with our customers, we are in touch with our consumers more often than not. So it is easy for us to have those channels of information go back, feedback flow in, and for us to make course corrections before we move into high fidelity and committing actual stuff to the tech guys so that they can start building upon it. Now once you are past this level, then of course comes the process of planning your rollout, your GTM and the sales guy. I mean, I've typically worn a sales hat when I do GTM, where in the calls I would
Yeah.
tell the sales guy, don't worry, I'll handle it. And I start pitching, I start realizing what is the USP I'm pitching, what is that inflection point where if somebody sees value, they'll actually go for it. What are the metrics I'm trying to push? What are the metrics I'm trying to show the CXO so that he can make a decision? And that is how my eventual BI and reporting of the product end starts coming. And throughout this journey, you will also discover operations, you will also discover marketing, you will also discover something as trivial as product documentation. I mean, uh, in a sea of all the features, you'll have that document will come one fine day to remind you that you forgot updating it. So all of this has to follow in the process, and then you have to be mindful at all times that what are you building for whom, and make that journey go through. So it's very fascinating. If in B2B, I would say a product manager nearly 30 to 40% of the times would share a sales hat, if not wear it completely.
Yeah, that's a well-rounded answer actually. Covers a lot of few things from my own experience. All right, I think we have quite a few questions which have trickled in since my last one. Maybe I'll just pick one which is relevant to as a follow-up question. Like, what are the market research techniques typically used in B2B, and how is it different from B2C space? That's a good question.
Oh, that's a very good question. That's a question that product managers would often ask themselves. How do we do market research in B2B? I have a client paying $100,000 for a feature, and market research says don't build it. So where would you go, right? That's a
Yeah.
struggle B2B will often come back with. So when we do market research, for example, one of the most obvious ways is to do it with your comparables. You find anybody else doing this, and you try to figure out how do they do it, what are their ways of doing it, and that's of course basics. That's what everybody will do. Another market research you'll do it is for the way you're trying to figure out your features or you're trying to figure out your roadmap. You also try to see where user patterns or that industry in general is moving, or where technology is taking an industry. So, for example, I'll give you an example. Bluetooth came into parking as a very, very fancy item somewhere back in 2019. The entire world went crazy. Startups were built just doing Bluetooth. Come 2 years later, it is still where it was, and come 2 years later, it is now on its way out. And we realized very initially that Bluetooth for certain use cases is not the most reliable piece of technology, especially for access control. So we decided very early on not to go down that line. And market and everybody said, no, this is the big thing. We were like, we'll wait it out and we'll see it out. And I'm more than happy to say that we did the right call at the right time. So you have to also be mindful of where the industry is moving and what is the feedback. And this again helps. Like I said, B2B is lucky to have its consumers and its customers who always give it feedback because they have a vested interest with you. They have an interest where they'll keep giving you feedback because they want you to build for them. So you utilize that feedback. You ask them what else they're using. You ask them what else are they seeing. And you also see how their consumption patterns are changing. You see how they are using your tool. Is it simplifying use cases for them? And I think that is where the constant feedback flow in B2B helps a lot. For B2C, of course, this would change very radically. You would look at your metrics, you would look at your funnels, you would look at your journeys, you would look at your heat maps, you would look at different sources of data. And I mean, I can name 100 sources and there will be 101st that I'll miss. B2C can be that fast. And there can be, so many sources from where you would get opinions, you'd get insights, and you'd have to pick which one to. I would say B2B that way has a lot more, can actually get a lot more structure. Of course, nothing by default has structure, but you can define structures in B2B and channel the information the right way. B2C may have a lot of things pulling you in all directions.
Got it. I think access to users is a big caveat in the B2B space. You can just call someone or mail someone or message someone or get them on a conversation to get information.
Absolutely.
B2C is a lot more nuanced. You can't pinpoint one person, but cohorts of people and how they're interacting with your product.
Absolutely.
Cool. We have an interesting question actually. How does the typical conversation as a developer look like? Explaining a business need from a technical standpoint, as they will need to translate and work towards it from a technical angle. Yeah. So essentially, how do we translate user needs into technical requirements and convey it to a developer?
This is one of my favorite activities, absolute favorite activities to do, because I believe if I've been able to do justice to a story by explaining to the developer what I need, then I've also done justice in identifying the need properly. Because if a developer doesn't turn around and ask me why are you building it, that means he sees value, and if he's able to see value, that means there is more often than not value there. I mean, that's how I typically judge my conversations. The way I would go about it is I try to summarize the problem statement I'm trying to solve in basic English. The best way to talk to a developer is don't talk technical. Talk absolute terms. Like the way I typically go around with my stories is, for example, if I'm building something in access control, I would ask them to close their eyes and imagine they were holding the steering wheel in a hand and drive through a garage. Imagine there was a camera, there was reading, and the gate didn't open for you. As a consumer, what would you what would click in your head that will say something is amiss? and what do we need to solve that? And then then it hits the developer that, oh yes, we need a communication. Okay, so how do you build the communication? I think a push can work. Exactly, that's in the story. And then you move beyond. Okay, we need a payment notification. Okay, why do I need a payment notification? Oh yes, because the person wouldn't hit them that they have to pay, or they have to pay before they exit. So the way I typically deal with developers is explain to them in bare English, why am I, what is the problem statement? What are the assumptions of how is the scenario set? What are you dealing with? At what point does the story kick in? And as a consumer or as a user, what would their experience be? And they accordingly are able to align themselves with what they need. Once you have achieved that point of realization with the developer, then of course, knowing how, based on your expertise of your tech stack, of your AWS, of whatever your cloud infra is, and how your expertise on different products is, you can of course tell them, okay, use this API here, cut this from there, use MQ here, use APIs here, and we are done. Or add a new field here, we'll use a BI reporting tool here, and we'll be done. But first and foremost, you have to be absolutely fluent in translating a requirement in bare English, because if that's not the case, believe me, someday you'll meet some developer who'll ask, everything is okay, but I still don't understand it. And it comes down to this: product managers are supposed to simplify chaos, right? That's in startups, at least that's what's expected of us, and that's what even I have been doing for 8 years: simplify chaos into chunks that people can digest.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer, actually. Just to add to it, folks, I think what's important is you, as a product manager, knowing absolutely clear why a feature or like a module or a product in itself should exist.
Yeah.
And once you have that level of clarity, then it's easy to translate it to anyone who's working on it. Like in the team, it could be a developer, it could be even you translating what the merits of, let's say, a new feature is to a salesperson or like a marketing person who can then translate it into like something which the end user will get, right? So I think and a bedrock of getting to that level of understanding is having your data sorted, like what kind of data you get, and then how do you like interpret it and build a case around why a particular problem needs to be solved and why a feature should exist.
I mean, your North Star has to be clear. Your metrics have to be clear. What are you gunning for? Who are you solving that case for? And at the end of the day, I look forward to those moments when a developer tells me, Aman, everything is okay, but I think you've missed a case here. And I'll have a Yuri moment that, oh shit, he's right, I've missed a case. When you start coming to that level, you should appreciate the developers because they've been able to understand, identify, and correctly break the PRD. And there's a rule that we follow here. It's better to break a PRD in grooming than break it in production, because the cost will be 10 or 100x. So better safe than sorry, always. And like you said, Kushal, you have to be a master of your story. You have to know what's needed. Of course, you wouldn't know the universe. You'll only know parts of that universe. So I wouldn't expect a product manager to know 3 iterations, hence what they'll make. But the first iteration has to be clear, has to be defined, has to be concrete, has to be resolute.
Yeah, the core assumptions going into building anything has to be like rock solid, no doubt. We have a question. Someone's raised their hand. Ankit, let me just.
Hi,
Perhaps
Kushal.
you'd like to unmute yourself. Okay. Yeah, we
Yeah,
can hear you.
actually,
Go on,
I have
Ankit.
just a follow-up question to what I asked earlier. So, is there ever a scenario wherein, let's just say, you have an understanding from the business standpoint, you have interacted with the stakeholders and they have communicated what they want, and now you're communicating with developers like you were explaining earlier. But let's just say a developer says that this is something not possible from a technical angle. So, would you go back to your stakeholders and just say that this is something we can't do? We might have to look for some other, uh, thing possible or certain other way of doing it. Is there some sort of scenario like that as well?
And that's a very fair question, Ankit. Reminds me of a conversation I had some weeks back. So my approach to that problem is, I mean, we all are in the era of technology where technology is evolving faster than we can even fathom what the next change can be. And I firmly believe that anything in technology is possible. The question is, are you willing to put in the effort? And that's how, we often try to build our features. A product manager trying to crunch bandwidth in a sprint will always trying to find the path of least resistance, right? Like an electron in a circuit. So when you're trying to fight that battle, you have to understand from the developer, okay, what is not possible. An engineering guy, I mean, engineers, even myself, are extremely passionate people about the problems we solve, and we pride ourselves in that ability. So you have to understand from the other party, if A to Z is the number of steps, what is that step where he feels in the journey that this is not possible or this may not work out, and then you have to actually double tap on that one, and then go deeper and figure out, is there any other example of, is there a comparable you can draw that who has done that? If that thing is absolutely necessary to how your user journey functions, your story, your output comes out, then you have to find a comparable. And maybe that developer may not agree, then find a lead or find a more capable person in that technology stack to explain how it can be done. Of course, the developers' intentions may all be right, they may just not have the right information. So, many a times, I came across a scenario once where we were trying to build a dynamic DNS setup for getting our hardware networking off the ground. And I went to a developer and I asked him, how do I do this? How do we do this? And he's like, in the current setup, we can't do this, and I'm not sure how to do this. So I could have shut my mouth there and my first product would have died. But I went around Googling because I was also sure that I'm not God's gift to mankind. Whatever problems I'm facing, somebody else has also faced, and this is out on Google. So I went to Google. There was a long approach, but there was an approach. I started building it out myself, and I was able to find an approach. Then I took it to the lead architect, and he was like, "Oh yeah, that can actually work." And voila, in a week we had the approach figured out, and the guy was able to make it work. So I firmly believe that in the era we live, building items on technology may not be a breaking point. What could be is how we are trying to do it and what is the approach towards it. It is of course always possible to have a negotiating point. If you go by what is a must have, what is a good to have, and what's a fancy to have, your fancy to have fringes and your good to have fringes can of course move. There is, like, you can skin a fish multiple ways, the same way you can go about reaching the same destination multiple ways. There will be something that is very core to your problem statement that cannot change, but there will be parts that if they move would not be as bad. So you always have to find that trade-off, explain to the leads, explain to the people involved, even your clients. Sometimes I've had situations where I've gone back to my clients, explain to them that, see, the core story is this, your core ask is this, I will get you this, parts A, B, C will work the way we discussed. D might need a slight detour. And if the client understands what you're trying to communicate and they have confidence that whatever you'll deliver will still work, and of course it has to be within bounds of logic, then I've seen people agree, I've seen people come to terms, and it actually leads me to a very interesting point. Oftentimes, product managers are the central node leading information out and feeding information into a system. And many a times we deal with people who may believe something is not working or may have their own notions about something. We have to be that person who says, okay, let's sit down calmly, let's understand the problem, and let's solve it one small step at a time. And before you know it, you'll actually have an approach out of it. So dealing with people is an equally important skill as dealing with the PRD. I mean, I keep telling my team here that you need to build those relationships with people you work, because you'll know through subtext, through their tone, what they mean when they say something, and where to change your approach, where to have that conversation, because our job is to make sure everybody delivers on the bigger objective. I mean, we are the source of information coming down. And if you think about it, a lot of you, when you actually work with teams, you might be actually defining what a bunch of 40, 50, 80, 100 odd individuals would do over a period of 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks. And that's not something, that's not something ordinary. Imagine people are coding your vision into reality. So you have to have that ability to reach out to people and simplify things, sit down with them, find solutions, have the courage to go back, tell your stakeholder, I agree, but we have to, make a concession here, make a concession there. And again, by Lord's grace, touch wood, I've not had a battle I've not been able to win. So, yeah, there is no situation.
Maybe it's a testament.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, maybe that's a testament to you picking the right battles then, Aman.
I was going to say that next. You also have to pick the right battles.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I have a question from my side, which I'm pretty sure everyone will have it in their mind as well. Uh, for early stage product managers who are just getting into the space, should they be choosing B2B products or B2C products? How would you think? How would you get them to think about it?
Man, I remember asking myself the same question every few years. The way I would approach it is this, and it really depends on, what fuels you, what drives you. Some say B2B has more structure, some say B2C has more freedom. Maybe they are true, maybe they're not. I've had both at where I am. I've been lucky that way. What I would say is this: if B2B has the ability for you to draft what you need to do and what you need to build, and some structure in your early on years that you can leverage in B2C later on. Of course, there's a hustler attitude involved. Of course, there's a knack for doing analytics and getting every data point possible involved. But also remember this: data does not drive decisions. Data can only give you insights. You drive decisions, and data will never be enough, or will never tell you that Kushal, do this, and fortune will be yours. Data will never do that. It does not have the capability. It's your brain. So at the end of the day, whichever side you pick, make sure you understand what data comes out and how you're able to read it, and how you're able to translate it, and how you're able to say, this is fine, but I will take path A, or this is fine, but I don't agree with it because this is cute. So between B2B and B2C, I cannot pick favorites. I've had my luck in both, and I would advise product managers, take an opportunity that excites you, take an industry that excites you, because if you're able to understand what you're doing, and if you're able to understand what your stakeholders are doing, your intuition will reach a point where you'll be able to predict exactly where data is actually going to come out from, and what patterns you'd expect, what insights you'd expect. In fact, a lot of times when we do our monthly review of data, we compare our B2B stakeholders and B2C stakeholders. We compare the data patterns, and we also write our assumptions in our PRD. And when the thing actually hits production, we go back to those assumptions to check, are they performing as expected, or are they doing exactly what we expected them to do? Funnily enough, after a while you start hitting the right point. So I wouldn't pick favorites, Kushal. Of course, I've worked in B2B more, and it pays. I mean, B2B has that angle of the industry, that it has constant recurring revenue, which is, of course, I would say, a great comfort point for a product manager to tie revenue directly to a business and be able to justify and be able to grow with it. B2C, while having its charms, also has that risk that 100 B2C startups can start and fail in a year. So if you're looking to have that, space for when you know that you can build, you can roll out, you can test, and you can experiment as much as you want, I think B2B might be a more forgiving space for that.
Yeah, I would probably say if you are being hired as a product manager in a B2B company, I think the assumption is the company or the startup has revenue already, right?
Yeah.
Because generally the initial product managers in our organization are the founders, or someone from the someone who wears multiple hats, which is founders initially. And B2C is quite volatile and highly competitive compared to B2B, and there's a high chance of things not working out, like higher chance of things not working in the B2C space. That said, I go back to 2 points which you mentioned. Like, one is, be excited about the industry you're in. The more you are able to build a domain interest, or domain knowledge by your own interest, the more it's going to obviously help you obviously crack your initial conversations well, in interviews well in these companies. Plus, also helps you make a great product manager as well, than an average person who is not that thrilled about particular industry. That said, I think a more important caveat is following up problem statements than anything. So, end of the day, product managers are problem statements. You're solving something for an end user, and the most efficient, scalable, cost-effective way possible, right?
I mean, exactly. This is what I was discussing with my.
Yeah.
Sorry. This is what we were discussing with the team the other day. That as product managers, we own problem statements, right? Our job is to come to solutions, but we never own the solutions. The moment a product manager starts owning the solution, they're screwed. It'll more often than not, they'll lose sight of the problem and go on a different tangent. And if you find a problem statement that excites you at any point, you should be able to go for it. I mean, when I stumbled into parking, I didn't think I'd be here. on and off 6 years, but here I am, and I find new problem statements to figure out and fix and make money for the org every new day. And believe me or don't, but there are all the angles I can play. There's a B2C angle, there's a B2B angle. So give an opportunity the right shot, and you'd be surprised at what more opportunities turn up your way.
Absolutely. Yeah, no doubt about it, actually. So coming to a few questions from the audience. There's one by Satish who's asked us, like, how do you like find key stakeholders for the product which you're building? What are the frameworks? What are the methods? How do you identify if that's the key stakeholder as well? That's an added question from my side.
Cool. So the framework, well, I don't have a name for the framework. I just call it people on a conference table. So if I have a story to build, then I will first start, like, I will think like a layman. Okay, why am I doing this? Who am I doing it for? Ask all the whys. Who, why, where, what, whatever you can, whatever, all the W's you can figure out. And then imagine you're sitting in a conference table. Who all need to be in that conference table for you to get that entire picture? If it is a movie, you need a script writer, you need an actor, you need a music director, a dance choreographer, right? The whole smash for you to get an idea. Okay, this is how a picture was made. So in the same fashion, for any story, for any requirement, you should be able to first understand who is missing in that puzzle piece. If you're building a button, who are you building it for? Why does that person need that button? Who's behind him that needs him to press that button? Who may be further behind him? So where does that chain end? And once you have all those faces in front of you in that conference table, you'll be able to figure out what are they doing in that transaction, what are they doing in that one interaction, what are they doing in that one value chain. And once you're able to identify what they're doing, what is their stake in it, then the story becomes explicitly clear. What do they want from it? Somebody wants a very fancy implementation, somebody just wants a database row to be updated, somebody just wants a button to show up somewhere, somebody just wants an email confirmation to come, right? And once you start figuring those bits out, and what is, again, you draw the line, what is essential, what is not essential, who's being fancy. A CEO wants to sit on a call because he's a CEO, he should sit on a call, but would he contribute to that? Probably no, he'll just walk out in 5 minutes. So do you need to solve for that CEO? Maybe not. If he wants, he can read the minutes of the meeting. So then you'll, instead of building a feature for a CEO to listen to 5 calls, I might build a feature for him to get minutes of the meeting and actually sell it to a larger audience. So different approaches I take. I prefer I love the conference room approach, because if I'm able to visualize every persona, I know I've done justice to the story. Otherwise, more often than not, we find surprises when we hit production.
Got it. I think just to add to that, I'll probably also say that I think user personas, building the right user personas and understanding the users at a depth that you can actually build solutions for them is a highly underrated skill for a product
Absolutely.
manager. I think it's highly underappreciated, but it's not recognized enough. Yeah, because everyone like jumps. We are wired for solutioning, right? So we just jump into, what, we have problem statements, but let's go build something, as a solution. It could be an existing product and you're building a feature on the existing product. No one asks, or I think there should be a lot more rigor in people asking the questions. You know what, is this a problem even worth being solved?
Yeah.
Right?
I mean,
Does the user even care about this problem being solved?
Yeah. A great product manager would know what problems not to solve, what battles not to pick, and where to draw the line and say, this is a limitation for now. And when sufficient value presents itself, I will actually, think about it again. Because otherwise, you go in the very beautiful feature trap, where there is no end to you building stuff and no end to somebody asking you for more stuff. Because which client does not want more features? I mean, I've never had a client which wanted me to stop building stuff. So it's very, very important to know where to draw the line and say, this is, this is exactly where we need to stop and contemplate, go back, and not just do that. Also think. So it's also very important to understand how do you trial out ideas, right, Kushal? I mean, I remember initially when we were doing the Access IoT Gate Kit thing in my product, we were trying to figure out hacky ways to test the idea even on ground. And this is something that we do even today. Whenever we have to try out a new product, module, what we do is we build a set of contraptions around it. Literally like
Yeah.
a whole set of pieces that are working with each other, but not necessarily supposed to, but working with each other within limitations so that the entire story, in a sense, works. And that's kind of our prototyping, and that we do with clients.
Yeah.
To understand that where does that prototype break? What are the limitations? What can actually deliver? What is a core requirement? Because it is very easy to get surprised in production that you thought from A, B, C, but actually D, E, F also existed. And once somebody started using ABC, they realized, oh shit, I also need DEF, otherwise this doesn't make sense. So being able to quickly experiment, being able to quickly be on your feet, be frugal, be scrappy, and present something that you can get feedback on, I think helps, draw out your personas even better. Once you start seeing where people are gravitating towards it, that really clears out the questions for me.
Sounds good. And yeah, I think I think I've said enough about getting the user personas right and understanding the problem statements well enough so that you can execute on it. Um, Probably we'll pick a question from the audience. I think we have someone from LinkedIn Live ask about, can you share examples of successful B2B product launches or initiatives you've led, and what factors contribute to their success? I think, yeah, understanding the underlying success factors would be an interesting, I would say, information for audience here.
Sure. So the story is from 2021. In fact, October 2021, 3rd October, 9th October is when we went live with this product. So, Kushal, you remember we used to have apps for paying for parking, and we did only apps. So, come COVID, everybody wanted to go touchless because touching something was no more hygienic. It was, in fact, a question on somebody's health safety. So, industry mobility as a whole took a massive hit when COVID hit, and people didn't move out of their homes. So, forget about people making money out of running parking operations. So when the industry came out of the lockdowns and when mobility picked up again, there was a whole fear of, I don't want to touch that machine to get a ticket, or I don't want to put my credit card, I don't want to pay cash to that machine, or I don't want to, take cash from an attendant because COVID. So we started figuring out that, okay, how do we capitalize on this? And one fine evening, I'm at a friend's birthday. We are having a party of our lifetimes, and I get a call that there's an opportunity for us, and there was an idea we were playing with, which was to move completely away from apps and build a simple transaction product, which takes a phone number, takes a license plate, takes a credit card, charges it, and done. Something like absolute bare minimums. And we did the whole conference table thing that what do we need? We need a license plate and a payment, and we need a phone number to send the receipt to and send alerts to if something happens, and that's it. So we only picked those three things, structured them together in a workflow. And interestingly, we found a client who wanted us to go live in 2 weeks. And we had to code that entire thing, fit testing, get it to production in 2 weeks. Of course, the client gave us some liberty that, get an MVP out and you can fix some parts of it in production, but make sure at least the core works. And that's how we that's how we ran with it. We coded the thing out, simplified the UX, removed all the fluff, and actually made it work like a completely net new vertical. And that thing scaled to doing something of 10x of what we were doing in US. And now more than like almost 80% of my business comes from that, and that thing is growing between 10 and 20% every month. And we have 100% coverage, 100% penetration at the locations where we deploy that product. So no other solution takes any transactions off of us. We are beating our, we are also setting the benchmark of how that entire section of web-based payments should work in parking. So just quoting an example that, and mind you, that 1 week period post launch was full of anxiety, was full of worry. Okay, what's happening right now? Okay, are there any down sessions? Are there any stuck sessions? So I remember having access to logging solutions, having access to my entire database, moving into the database completely, having my own reports built out, working with the team to have an understanding of what is going on. Because again, you can build all the analytics you want, but when you're scrappy and you're trying to do something quick, analytics won't be the first hill you'll conquer. It may be the last, it may not even be the last thing on your mind. So we made sure that the core problem statement made sense, the core user journeys made sense, and everything else was gradually built around it. And now that product is a demon in itself. It's one of the biggest products we sell. And now there are other products that are getting built around it to, facilitate that product, to support that product. And that's driving our business. So, and I've got multiple stories like that, right? Building access with the enable product when you were there, Kushal. And now we are also building an LPR AI based license plate recognition system that
Nice.
you don't need tickets anymore. It's a ticketless parking solution that we're now building. I already have my first site already on ground. We have had a first set of learnings. We're going to scale that, and I'm doing something like 25,000 sessions from that location alone in a day, and in all the metrics are aligning. So NPDs are a great way to learn quickly and fail fast. Of course, it's not for the faint-hearted. So be ready to put in those hours, put in those midnights, and you won't be disappointed when the result comes out.
Thanks for sharing that. It brings back some memories of us having worked together on some really cool products and product launches, in fact. Brings me to the question. You mentioned artificial intelligence, right? You mentioned AI powered like LPR.
Right.
We are in the era of AI already. A specific question about, and these things have changed for aspiring product folks, like since, let's say, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, when AI was not in the fray. So, a straight question: how has AI changed things for aspiring product managers today? The follow-up question: like how is AI being used by product managers today? Maybe like both of them have some correlation. That's why I'm just dropping it together. But happy to hear your thoughts about it.
Sure. So, for a while, when you're a product manager, you always have that buy versus build debate going on in your head. If you want to facilitate a workflow, there are parts of it that will be available outside off the shelf. You borrow those parts, you build your first workflow, and you get it out. You get first traction. You start understanding what are the critical parts in that workflow, what is absolutely core, and where are those match winning capabilities in what engine, and then you slowly start internalizing it. So LPR and AI LPR has been one of those parts for us where we've always maintained that we don't want to do license plate recognition. It's a solved problem. The world is doing it. But then we started realizing that there is enough data that we have over our years of experience that we can crunch and find patterns of how characters are read, find patterns of what is allowed, what is not, how an O looks like, how a zero looks like. We started noting that intelligence down and finding patterns in a location, because the luxury of parking is it is a physical address at which transactions are happening. If you're able to define that relationship, a lot of the AI comes down to absolute basics, where if you have the right insight, you can just you start pairing things and taking out your edge cases and helping your AI with a probabilistic model to deliver the highest probability of success. So for us, a lot of it was learning over a period of time, and also relying on the industry itself to move forward. Like if AI is coming if AI is progressing in the world, it is progressing for everybody, for your vendors, for your partners, for your competitors. So all the solutions that you use today, or all the solutions that use you today, would eventually evolve with AI. So what we did was we used the best of our partners. We added a layer on top, intelligence on top, and we were able to, play with it, work with it, and we were able to improve performance by almost 70% of the edge cases. So whatever the traditional models were failing at, we were able to get an improvement of 70% on that performance. So that has been a cracker of an experience for us, where we are constantly learning and at the same time unlearning whatever we have built. When it comes to how AI helps product managers, I've been trying to use AI products in the way with how I would process my numbers, how I would crunch my metrics, or how I would pose questions to that AI model to find insights, or to the answers to the questions if I'm building a new story and find data points that would back it up or not. So I would recommend this. Ask the right questions and let AI answer it for you. If you have the right questions in place, an AI, or in the worst case, an SQL query will also do that job. Of course, you might have to do a longer time writing that query, but use AI judiciously. I use AI a lot of times for writing my documents. We all do AI for writing our emails and everything, but the core job of a product manager lies in asking the right questions. If you have the right question to ask an engine which has a data lake that can crunch those numbers and get it out to you, you'll know exactly what problem you're solving, and that will be the metric that you'll be tracking. But if you're not able to do that, trust me, AI will give you a number, but you may go extremely south with it, and the output may be very different
Yeah.
from what you're expecting. So in the
Yeah, I
right
think
hands, the tools are magic.
sort of reminds me of, yeah, I think it reminds me of a framework which I generally use, GIGO, which is garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
if you're very clear about and you've done your research on what to ask, let's say a system, and it could be a person as well, right? You'll probably get a more meaningful output than you like going with some half-baked assumptions, half-baked data, and then trying to get an output of a system. And I think personally speaking, ChatGPT has been a great, I would say, lifesaver, not lifesaver, it's like a productivity boost for a couple of use cases. Again, exercise caution in terms of how you ask questions and what you ask questions. Uh, my personal, I would say, I would say how ChatGPT probably would work best is you give all the facts and it ask it to formulate responses based on the facts, then it come up with a solution based on the imagination. Generally, as a product manager, you work with facts, you work with numbers, information. So it's very necessary how you pose the question to these systems, and then the quality of output totally depends on what kind of data you take it as an input as well. So
I mean,
we have a
it's like
question from Ankit. Yeah,
sorry, go ahead, Kushal.
go
Sorry.
on.
No.
We have a question from Ankit. So can you provide your take on a product hitting chasm stage with respect to perhaps B2B or B2C products, or if ways of coming out of it from the same across both?
Wow, that's a very, very loaded question. I mean, the gap between the early adopters and early majority is something even I struggle with sometimes. I mean, in product management, if a book or if a straight answer could be given, I think our lives would have been a lot more easier than they are today. So the way I would look at it is, when you have early adopters, if you are dealing with early adopters, make sure your product is not extreme high fidelity. If you have already committed to doing that, then the path of coming out of the chasm stage will be very, very difficult. And that's where I say, if you know how to be frugal and how to be hacky, and you're able to communicate to your tech lead. For example, I've got great leads here, and I go to them with a problem statement that, you know what, I want one slide change here because I want to run an experiment. They'll find the path with the lowest effort involved, and we'll be able to run that experiment in 2 hours, work with the early adopters, and figure out that where is that inflection point beyond which I get the majority users on board. So I'm not sure if there is one straight way out of it. What I would recommend is having that insurance that you don't go all in before you actually see your majority adopters in front of you, or arriving at a point, because it's very easy to go into the chasm stage, having committed everything without having a lot of understanding of what your TAM looks like, what your user base looks like, what is the recent what is the case of recurring users. So how frequently would you actually have people going into it? So I mean, not so much advice for how to get out of it. I would say try making an approach that doesn't lead you in. Kushal, you have a better answer for that? Then even I would love to hear that.
No, actually, more or less in line with what you've mentioned. Just to add to it, I think keep revisiting your assumptions, core assumptions, like know your user better than themselves, know the market better than the majority of people, and being very frugal is a very essential, I would say, combination of things necessary to get out of chasms. You have to experiment your way out. You have to hack your way out, like figuring out what's working, what's not working, and double down on what's working always. That's what OpenAI has done, right? If you go back to Sam Altman talking about how they stumbled upon GPT-3, which was the most groundbreaking model which came out, or the first time OpenAI came onto the radar of doing something like really phenomenal. They had no idea what they were getting into. All they did was they kept experimenting by moving like taking a step in multiple directions and seeing what's working, what's not working, right? And wherever they feel that something's working, they double down on. They take an additional step in that direction, and then try a bunch of experiments, and then see what's working, what's not working. Although, like in real life is rarely that abstract. So you will have a lot of data. You have a lot of things which you can like make really solid assumptions and then build a solution or like identify the right problems, identify the right opportunity in terms of market size, etc. And put something out fast. Correct your mistakes faster, and then you keep like working on what's working. So I think that's how I'd probably approach it. Folks, I think we are slightly over time, although we could do one last questions before we call it an evening. I'm going to leave it to the audience. We'll probably wait for some time, a few seconds to see if there's a question trickling in. We can do one question, folks. I think this is the question which we've. Hey Rohit, yeah, go on, Aman. So this is a question by Rohit. Rohit, just a disclaimer, we've covered a lot of the problem discovery phases in the questions in the past. We'll see if we can add more to it, or Aman can add more to it. Any framework for problem discovery phase for B2B products?
So I'm not a fan of very big fancy frameworks. I've never been able to wrap my head around it. I've been a fan of what works for me, and you go absolutely all guns blazing with it. My framework for product discovery is to keep asking the question, where is, why is this working or why is it not working, and where is the next dollar to be made? And ask the people who you are solving. So again, imagine a conference room, imagine all the stakeholders sitting, and whatever value you're bringing to the table, is that completely solving their problem, or is there still somewhere where there is more value that can be added without you again breaking your back or changing the way your product actually works? I mean, you can of course add value to somebody's life, but that shouldn't completely delineate or deviate from where your product strategy lies. So incremental product management involves asking these questions a lot, asking to the right people that what is the next step in their value chain. Is the value chain complete? Then move to the next bit of the value chain. If there is still room in that value chain for you to move the next step, solve a problem, then that is where you attack. The way I would do it is, because I have weekly calls or monthly calls with my customers, so I get to talk to them, understand, pitch ideas with them. So many times I also try to pitch my other product features or workflows around, and ask why people would take an approach or they wouldn't take an approach. We also do sometimes brainstorming sessions where I encourage them to come in with an idea of what I could do for them, and then we hack it out. And of course, it also depends on the person sitting on the other side of the table. If they are tech savvy, if they like to be involved, I've seen amazing ideas come from my customers that I've incorporated in my product, and I've had customers who gave me ideas which, honestly, if I built it, wouldn't be a parking solution anymore. So I have to respectfully say that while all this makes sense, this is not exactly where my expertise or my core value prop would lie, and hence I would take a step back from there. I also make it a point to sync up with my sales team, because sales guys are always hearing news from around the industry, and it's like an antenna which keeps on receiving and broadcasting information. If you can just funnel all of the news they are hearing, and put in a weekly cadence and just write down what they're looking at, and just then work through that list, filter out what doesn't make sense, filter in what does, and get it double checked in your weekly calls with your customers. Hint around, ask around, joke around. And what I do sometimes is I use draw.io to just draw rough workflows, see what makes sense, and then show it to a client and ask, okay, what do you think about this? And sometimes you actually hit gold. And I think that's a great way to start, because in B2B, building products is important. Engagement with your end customer is equally important, which is a very underrated aspect of B2B product management. A lot of the insights would always come from the other side, because while you are building something for somebody, many times in B2C, if, for example, you're building Amazon or Zepto, you can go through the order experience as a consumer and realize what didn't work. But if you're building something for somebody who's, let's say, passport seva, you are not the person processing the passport, or you're not the person doing police verification. So while you would be able to, understand the problem statement, the nuances, the intricacies, the pain points may not always be exactly visible. So engagement with the customer is the best way to, find out where else can you add value.
Great. I mean, I don't have anything to add to that. Rohit, I hope the question is answered. I hope your question is answered. All right. With that, we bring today's discussion to an end. Today's session to an end. Aman, as always, it's a pleasure to have a conversation with you.
Same here,
And folks who are like, you're welcome, and thanks for joining us at PM School Start Session. To folks who are like dialing in from LinkedIn Live, thanks for joining. We appreciate everyone being here on a busy Thursday evening, and hope you had great takeaways from today's session as well. We will obviously share Aman's coordinates, LinkedIn coordinates, in case you want to reach out to him directly. We're happy to answer any questions you have on the PM School live cohort program as well. To reach out to Priyal from my team. And with that, we end today's session. Thanks so much for joining us, Aman.
Thank you so much, guys. This was lovely. Not often do you get to look at so many questions, and actually, I was also thinking in my head. So love these moments.
Thanks so much. All right, folks. Have a great rest of the week. Thanks for joining, and see you guys in the next Start Session. Thank you.
Have a great
Thanks,
night.
Aman.
Bye bye.